Have Maelstrom Smith lived the usual dwarven life in Baldur's Gate. Grew up as a normal dwarven child, but when fate thrust her upon the Nautiloid, she thought she'd follow in the footsteps of the heroes and legends she'd heard so much about as a small dwarven child. The idea of this build is to try and make use of dual wielding. It's often said that dual wielding is really not very good, and for the most part I can agree, but we're going to do our best. We're going to start off as a fighter. This is so we can get a fighting style from the beginning, 2-weapon fighting, which lets us add our ability modifier to our offhand weapon, which will help make dual wielding a bit better, because dual wielding cannot use something like Great Weapon Master, sadly. Going for a fairly, well, I would say standard setup for a melee character, putting our primary attack at 17, dex and con at 14 each. The others you can do as you want with. I tend to put wisdom higher because it's used as a defense against some spells, and the wisdom skill checks, some of them are useful like survival and perception. I've actually used one of the hirelings, who is a gold dwarf, and then use the magic mirror to change their look and name and also their class. So we're going to level up in fighter for 6 levels straight. I'm going to pick the Eldritch Knight subclass, but Battle Master would work just as well. I'm picking Eldritch Knight mostly so I can get Blade Ward and Light. I'll explain why later. As for spells, it's always a good idea to have Shield as a martial character, and then almost anything else you want. I'm going to pick Magic Missile for now. For the expanded, I will pick Longstrider because she is a dwarf. This will give her some extra movement speed and you don't have to rely on anyone else. At level 4, I'm going to pick Thunderwave because I think it's quite fun to knock people back. For her first feat, she could pick either Dual Wielder or Heavy Armor Master. In these early stages, you might not even be dual wielding at this point. So I'm going to pick Heavy Armor Master to put that strength up by 1 and help reduce incoming damage. We want to get to at least level 5 in fighter to get the early power spike, so we get 2 attacks per turn. I'm not going to change any spells. The reason we're going to level 6 is to get a second feat as quickly as possible, where we will pick Dual Wielder. What this does is allows you to wield weapons in both hands, even if they're not light. So we're looking at any one-handed weapon. And also we get a +1 bonus to armor class, which helps, not being hit. After that, we're going to go into Rogue. For your abilities, I'd say whatever you want. Your athletics is already fairly high, so I would say expertise and athletics is a nice idea. Makes her better at shoving. And then honestly, any other skill is fine. I'll leave it at sleight of hand. Maybe you don't have someone who's good at sleight of hand already. At level 2, we don't get anything to choose, but we do get these actions here, or well, bonus actions here. And at level 3, we're going to go for Thief, just so we get the extra bonus action. And then we may as well take one last level in Thief, Rogue, so we get an extra feat immediately. And this time we're going to go for Sentinel. I'll explain why later. There is a bug for Sentinel that's in our favor. And then the last 2 levels we'll go back to Fighter. We get access to some level 2 spells. I'm going to go for Melf's Acid Arrows. Maybe we can create some acid on the ground. I haven't actually used this yet. And Arcane Lock. Honestly, the level 2 spells aren't that great. We do get access to an expanded set of spells. I'd pick either maybe Magic Weapon, not the best, but potentially a use for it. Misty Step is a good idea. In the end, I'm going to go with Enlarge. You'll see a lot of these are yellow. I did play about with having a 1 level in Wizard, and I scribed all these spells, which is why it says I've already got these from another source. But since I'm not a wizard, I don't actually have access to them. And for the last feat, we're going to beef up her damage a bit by taking Savage Attacker. This gives her advantage on all of her damage rolls. The reason I picked Shield Dwarf is so she gets an extra hit point every level. In another variety of this build, I did take Tough instead of Sentinel, but actually Sentinel helps us get extra attacks. In terms of items, I've tried to go for items we can get relatively early on in the game. I will put a link to the BG3 wiki page for all these items here in the description below. So when we're below 50% hit points, we have an additional bonus action. As some of you might be thinking, quite rightfully, we're below 50% hit points. CVG, isn't that like a little bit dangerous? Well, this is why we've taken Blade Ward. This is why we've got some heavy armor, and we've got a heavy armor master to help us survive that a little bit longer. Anyway, this comes from Act 3. This you'll get later in the game. And the same thing goes for the cloak. The cloak isn't that important for the build. You could put almost any other cloak you want on. The Adamantine Splint Armor from the end of Act 1 from Grimforge. This is so we have all incoming damage reduced by 2. And if an enemy hits us, they can be sent reeling, so they have a penalty to hit after that. And we also can't be hit by critical hits. One alternative to help with the hit points is a Dwarven Splint Mail from Act 2. Lantarv, if you get access to his special stash, we get an extra 2 Constitution and 1 less piercing damage. Doesn't really match up so well with this. but gives us some extra hit points if you want that, and an extra armor class. Gloves of the Automaton, you get from Barker's Root. You can get this from nearly at the beginning of Act 2. He is in the Last Light Inn. What this does is once per short rest, we can use a bonus action to give ourselves advantage for 10 turns, and also have resistance to lightning damage, but that doesn't really come up so often. Line Breaker Boots, these come from the Goblin Camp. Once per turn, when you dash, you gain Wrath for 2 turns. With each turn remaining of Wrath, you get an extra 1 damage bonus with your melee weapons. And as a rogue, we can dash with a bonus action, and as a thief, we can do that twice. So we can build up a lot of Wrath quite quickly. Amulet of the Harpers, we can buy this from the Last Light Inn. This is just for an extra use of shield and advantage on wisdom saving throws, because the wisdom saving throws help defend against the nastiest spells. And the Caustic Band, just for an extra 2 damage. And the Callous Glow Ring, also for an extra 2 damage each time we hit. To make sure that the enemy is illuminated, we can use light on ourselves. So they are definitely illuminated, that's why I want light. And Blade Ward, this allows us to receive half damage from bludgeoning, piercing and slashing attacks, which can help us survive if we go beneath that 50% threshold. For the ranged weapon, you can pick any ranged weapon you want for any of the bonuses. Again, I'm trying to pick things from early in the game. Oh, I forgot to say, the Caustic Band can come from the Myconid colony very early on. The Callous Glow Ring comes from a bit further into the game. Perhaps before this, you might want to wear Crusher's Ring, just for an extra 10 feet of movement speed. Alternatives for the gloves, maybe the Gloves of the Growling Underdog. If you know you're going into combat with a lot of enemies, this gives advantage if we've got 2 enemies nearby. If you're happy with the chance to hit any set of gloves that deal extra damage, these come from Act 2. The Gloves of the Growling Underdog come from Act 1, nice and early. And then we come to the weapons. Now, one thing I want to point out about this build is it's not dependent on any particular weapon. This is Phalar Aluve, comes from relatively early on in the Underdark in Act 1. So dual wielding, we get an extra armor class. The Defender Flail, for example, increases our armor class by 1 and reduces incoming damage by 1. Also bludgeoning, piercing and slashing damage. But play around. Find any one-handed weapon you like the look of. I've picked up the Speedy Reply. When a wielder hits an enemy with this weapon, they gain momentum, so we'll be able to move further each turn. Perhaps the Ritual Axe. This comes from the Goblin Camp. Now, this doesn't do much damage by itself. It's 1d6. But there's a chance to inflict Bane on the enemy. If the attacker still has 50% or more hit points, they take 1d6 piercing damage. But since we're being a bit clever, we're going to reduce that by 2 from here. Anyway, it's time to go out. Time to go and show you how we can work this thing. So to get the most number of attacks, you do want an ally nearby. So I'm going to get my Paladin to just get close by the enemy. Alright, so on the first turn, I would heavily advise dashing at least once, which actually gives you 3 turns of Wrath when you dash, not 2 as the item says. Now, since I can make it, yes, I can make it. Right. Using Circuitry Interface is probably a good idea on the first turn also. So maybe on the first turn, we're not going to get lots of attacks off. Oh, critical hit, lovely, right? Now, this is on a tactician save, not an honor mode save. In honor mode, we wouldn't get this extra 2 damage here. But yeah, look at that, right? We got on 2d8 because of the critical hit. Where we got 10, which is, it's okay, it's not the best actually. +1/+1/+1 from Wrath. And an extra basically constant 4 damage from the Acid and Radiant. And then let's, I'm kind of hoping that I miss. I'm going to waste an attack just to show you something. Oh no. Right. So if I now move away and they attack, because we've got Sentinel, we can get an extra attack. But if I go back to her turn, it actually procs another main hand extra attack, even though she was all out of attacks. Bam. Okay, that was probably a bit of a waste. But on her turn, she took 2 main hand attacks, and then 1 from Sentinel, and then she got an extra 1, because Sentinel, this is the bug, Sentinel is bugged. You can actually gain an extra attack on your turn. So I need to find a group of enemies to fight, to show you how well it plays out as well, in a group. So I've just cast level 5 Aid in Hero's Feast to bring up her hit points total to 140. Not too bad. So I'm going to reduce her hit points down to less than 70. Yeah, why not? There we are. And so now she has 3 bonus actions. What more could we want? As an Eldritch Knight, you can use weapon bonds. This will help you make sure that you can't be disarmed. As for elixirs, the Elixir of Cloud Giant Strength is probably the best, because compared to her strength of 18, this is a +4 bonus to hit and a +4 bonus to damage. An alternative might be the Elixir of Vigilance, because her initiative is quite low. Perhaps an Elixir of Heroism if you haven't got any abilities that increase your chance to hit. I'm going to pick the Elixir of Cloud Giant Strength now, show you what it looks like, except I can't because I have been preparing. So I've equipped a few more Act 3 items now. I've picked up the Flail of Ages and used Elemental Age to stick acid damage onto Flail Aluve. When you use the Flail of Ages, its ability gets put onto the main hand. You could also use the Drake Throat Glaive to do something very similar. I've got Shriek going this turn, just started that. I've just made her start concentrating on Enlarge, which adds an additional 1d4 damage. And because I'm concentrating, I'm going to try to use the Strange Conduit Ring instead. Unfortunately, if we do lose concentration, we're going to lose this 1d4 psychic damage. I've added on the Hell Dusk Gloves to add an extra 1d6 fire damage. I would say it's probably more useful to pick a different set of gloves, perhaps. Maybe the Gloves of Belligerent Skies. I had Tav, my Paladin, cast, and just for the sake of it, I've got Gale, who has cast Magic Weapon onto Tav Maelstrom Smith. I've kind of wasted a turn of Shrieking, but I think I'll be okay. So I'm going to take an Elixir now. Now to start the combat, I'm not going to use her because I want her to cast Dash in combat to give her the extra damage. So I'm just going to start with my other Tav. Showing off the power of Paladins there. So she's been quite lucky with her initiative. Sometimes it has been much, much lower. So as usual, start with a bonus action dash to give yourself 3 turns of Wrath. In fact, I think I'm just going to do it twice. When we attack, we get Sneak Attack. That did 60 damage, I can see that. What helps is that we had Sneak Attack, and that this is in Tactician. In Tactician, Philo Aluve also adds damage from the Sneak Attack. Going to attack again. 48 damage. Not bad. Oops. And then we're going to try and get Sentinel going. Oh, I don't have my reaction yet, that's why. Right. So we're going to get an opportunity attack anyway. Ooh, very unlucky to miss twice, I think. Alright, here we go with the 2 attacks. That was very nice. So do bear in mind, on a critical hit, all the damage you're doing that's rolling a die, you roll that damage die twice. It's got 32 slashing damage there. The acid damage, we've got 2d4 from, actually not really from Flail Aluve, this is from the Flail of Ages, plus 2 from the ring. And with Savage Attacker, we're getting quite high damage rolls, which is to be expected, really. And then we can go again. This time I might just take an offhand attack. Thankfully, I can use Rush Attack, which lets us sneak. And then on an appropriate turn, Action Surge to get the extra attacks in. So any bonuses to attack can really help with someone who is dual wielding because all those bonuses get used more than once in a turn. Now, unfortunately, I don't have her at fewer than 50% hit points. If I did, I could either get another dash in to top up the Wrath or get an extra attack in to keep up that damage. Top up my dash, my Wrath. You can see this person is going to get some opportunity attacks, potentially if Gale walks away. So I'm going to start off by trying to use up my actions. And go and say hello. We'll get Sentinel in, don't worry about that. And then we can come back and get another attack off. Whack. So by the time we get to Act 3, and if you're properly prepared for each battle, you can do lots of damage. And I quite like that. And I like seeing the kind of, it's not a full rainbow, right? But I do like seeing all these various different colors pop up. Now, unfortunately, what probably would do more damage than this is just dual wielding hand crossbows with the same setup. Then you can take Sharpshooter and get a plus 10 damage to every single attack, plus most of these things, because all of these apply to weapon attacks, which hand crossbows are weapons, and so that would also apply. So let me know what other sources of damage you would give to a build such as this. This is by no means a build that does the most damage, but I just wanted to find ways to increase the utility of dual wielding. Thank you to all the members of my channel, and thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one.